This is choosing an open source license. My source process. So there's two main types of open source licenses. There's the permissive licenses and the copyleft. Permissive licenses allow you to do pretty much whatever you want. They're permissive. Generally only require you to give attribution, and they can be used in proprietary applications. They don't require any, or usually don't require code to be contributed back. And some examples of those are Apache license, MIT, BSD, WGFDL, and public domain. The thing to know about public domain, though, is that public domain does not, some countries don't have the legal concept of public domain, so it's better to put it under something like the WGFDL.
Isn't there some Creative Commons license that acts as public domain even in jurisdictions that don't have public domain?
Yes, but Creative Commons is more for artwork and just works than for software.
Okay. Should it make a difference in the case of public domain?
Wait, in the case of public domain, I'm not sure. Anyway, so copyleft licenses. They're the same as permissive, except they have a few more restrictions on them in order to enforce certain things, like contributing code back, or you can't use them in proprietary applications, or protecting user freedoms. So some examples of those are GPL, LGPL, Adult Public License. I'm sure you've heard of most of them. So really, when choosing a license, you have to figure out what do you care about, and like what would make you angry if someone did something with your software. So like, do you care about if it could be used in a commercial application? So do you care about if your code could be sold by some random company, and then people only know that you made it, but they see it being sold by someone else? Do you care about the freedom of the user, freedom to do? I'll cover that later. Do you care about if patent protection? So in some countries, you can patent something even if there's prior work already available. There were a few cases of that, especially with Linux, where some companies were like, oh, we patented this thing, we can't do this, and then it's a bad situation. You don't want that to happen. And you might not care about anything at all. You might just be like, oh, the code's out there, I don't care what people do with it. And so here's the licenses I'll be going over. Personally, I like GPL and Apache version 2, so I'm a little biased towards those two, but really any of these are decent licenses, and on the open source licenses website, there's plenty more to choose from. Although I would strongly discourage using any licenses published by Microsoft. They tend to not be very friendly. So, the GNU General Public License. The big thing about the GPL is that it protects the freedoms of the user. It has, because Free Software Foundation is the organization behind the GPL, and they try to make sure that everyone has 4 essential freedoms. So freedom to run the program as you wish, the freedom to study how the program works and change it, the freedom to distribute copies of the program, and the freedom to distribute copies of modified versions of the program. Essentially, they're to ensure that you have control over your computers that you own. So if you're running code on a computer and it's written by somebody else and you don't have the source code, then you're not really controlling your computer. The person who wrote that code is controlling your computer. So when you run an operating system like Windows 10 or Microsoft Windows, Microsoft and Apple are controlling your computer, and they can restrict what you do because they have the source code. So the GPL, if you don't care about any of the philosophical freedom part, one of the benefits that especially Linus Torvalds cares about is it helps prevent project fragmentation. So what you see with a lot of permissively licensed code is that you might have a bunch of different versions. A great example of that is Unix. With Unix, you have like IBM Unix, HP Unix, AT&T Unix. And because it's under, Unix is under the BSD license, companies could take that, modify that, and then not distribute the source code. So you have a bunch of different versions, and they all work slightly different. Now, this happens sometimes with Linux, but with Linux, they have to publish their code changes. So if somebody made a beneficial modification, that could be merged back into the mainline kernel. Yep.
So, subtle but potentially significant point. The GPL doesn't require changes to be published. It requires that if a modified version is distributed, then the source needs to accompany the modified version.
Yes, that's true. It's, yeah, with any of these licenses, really, if you're only using the code for yourself, nobody cares, because, I mean, you can't get sued if nobody knows you're doing something that the license forbids. But yes, so you only have to publish your changes if you publish the code in binary form or even source form of that. That would include the changes. So anyway, so with Linux, again, all the changes get merged back into mainline kernel, and that's a very good thing. And that's why Linux supports so many different pieces of hardware, so many different, different computers, different platforms, ARM, Spark, all those architectures. With the GPL, it's easy to build a community around. Again, going back to the fragmentation thing, if you have one project, it's easy to get a bunch of people working on that and a bunch of people working on two different projects. All derivatives, again, all derivatives that are published need to be GPL v3. And that's why some people consider it a viral license, but I would argue it's not a viral license, because if you don't want to use it, if you don't want to have to abide by the GPL, you don't have to use any GPL code. Important thing to know, if you're making an iOS or Windows Phone application, you cannot use the GPL. And this is because the Apple App Store and Microsoft App Stores have, they have DRM in the apps. And you can't give an app to someone else if there's DRM in it, because it won't be able to run on the phone or whatever. And that's a very interesting issue, but there's really no way to get around it without jailbreaking or sideloading. But if you want to publish something on the App Store, you can't use the GPL. It's not like a
GPL library.
Sorry?
And you can't use any GPL library, presumably.
Correct. Yeah. But you can use permissively licensed code. And then final point for the GPL v3, specifically the third version, not the second version, protects against patents, as I was discussing earlier, and against TiVoization, where TiVo used Linux, and they have Linux running on their TiVo devices, and they publish their code changes, but you could not then, from their source code, compile your own TiVo operating system and then put it on your TiVo, because the processor enforced signature checking on the code. And Richard Stallman didn't like that. Linus Torvalds didn't care. He just wanted the changes back to the mainline. That's all he cared about, and that's why the Linux kernel is under the GPL v2. And then Free Software Foundation recommends this run over 300 lines. Now, there's all public license version 2. It's GPL compatible, which is nice, because then you can use it in your GPL licensed application. And because it isn't as restrictive as the GPL, you can use it in iOS and Windows Phone apps. But it isn't a totally permissive licenses. It is still a copyleft license where you have to publish your changes. And it's used by Firefox, so if you use Firefox, that's under the MDM. Apache 2.0. It's recommended by the Free Software Foundation to use it instead of the MIT or VSD licenses. So this is a permissive license. It's essentially the same as the MIT and VSD licenses, except it offers patent protection. So also, I should probably clarify what I mean by patent protection. It means like it's not like you're giving a patent on your stuff, but you prevent other people from patenting the stuff and then trying to sue you. Because if they try to sue you, their license to the code gets taken away automatically, built into the license. And the Free Software Foundation recommends this for under 300 lines of code. The LGPL generally used for kernel modules and for really code that can be linked to other code, or is often linked to other code. It's essentially the same as the GPL. It's the exact same thing, but it has an extra clause on it that says there's an exception so that any code linked to it does not have to be released under the GPL or LGPL. Yes?
Can this be used in iOS and Windows apps?
Yes, because, well, I'm not a lawyer, so don't take anything I say as final, but I'm pretty sure you can, because with the LGPL, you only have to publish your modifications to the code itself. You don't have to publish anything if it's linked with. You don't have to put your application under the LGPL. It's linked.
I think though, in order for the part of this is that it has to be, the user has to be able to run their modified version of the GPL library. So so that's why like, you could use LGPL code with dynamic linking but not static linking, I think.
Yes.
And so is there a mechanism sufficiently like dynamic linking on phones such that the user could run their own version of the LGPL library?
I know at least with iOS apps, if you compile the library separately and then include it, it just, the one app is a bundle of all the stuff. So you're distributing the code separately, but they're just.
So that's made in violation.
Maybe, I don't know. I haven't really read up on using the LGPL in. So, final license talking about here, the MIT and VSD licenses. They're essentially the same thing, just with a little different wording. You can consider the MIT a combined two-clause VSD because it's literally just block text saying essentially you can take the code, you can modify the code, you can distribute the code, or you can distribute binary compiled versions of the code, and the only requirement is that you provide the copyright notice in all of the source code files of that original program, and then also, you're just providing attribution. That's really all the MIT and VSD licenses do. And because you only have to provide attribution, you can use it in a proprietary application. So that's why Google and a lot of other companies release all the code they make under either the MIT or VSD licenses, because they want to be able to, they want other companies to be able to use them in proprietary stuff. And the reason why people go with the MIT or VSD licenses is so that it's basically a way to get jobs. Because if you write some code and then you have it published and then some company uses it and then they make something using that code, it's a way to say, hey, this person contributed to this project, and if you want help, like if you want to hire somebody to help you with this person would be great. Yes?
So is there a reason companies don't typically use the Apache license, or at least not as often as the MIT and VSD licenses?
I mean, I'm sure plenty of companies do. I just know off the top of my head that like all the Android user space stuff is BSD. I guess for simplicity. But, pretty sure that's it. Yeah, that's the end of my slideshow. Any questions? Any more questions?